With nearly 2 weeks of New York Jets training camp activity underway at the Atlantic Health Jets Training Center in Florham Park, we're here to update you on player progress and the latest depth chart analysis following the green and white scrimmage and leading up to the Jets' first preseason tilt on Friday night against Atlanta. As Jets FM on the Our-Lads Football Radio Network starts now. All right, it's Tuesday, August 7th, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma. Welcome back to this training camp edition of Jets FM on the OFN at ourlads.com. Joining me from training camp, he's been covering Jets football for 29 consecutive seasons and has been the editor for the Jets yearbook for 12 consecutive seasons and is the current senior consultant and reporter for NewYorkJets.com, Randy Lang. Randy, good to talk to you again.
Greg, good to talk to you. Another hot day in Florham Park in North Jersey. Second day in a row, it's going to be around 90. And that's always great news for coaches and not so great news for players because they would got to get those guys in shape for the season that's ahead.
Yeah, I get that. But, you know, as we all have come to debate over the past few years, the players have kind of had their way with practices, limited practices, haven't they? And I wonder whether or not that gets changed during the next negotiations because I think even the players have to realize in a way, I mean, in order to maximize their potential, they got to practice more or at least get in film room more. There's got to be more interaction with the coaching staff during the season than what we've come to get familiar with over the last several years.
Yeah, you can encapsulate that all in one question. What's two-a-days? I remember, I'm an old-timer, you know. I go back 5 years when we had two-a-days, and Eric Mangini had 3-hour practices. Those are all things of the past. You know, you're right. I can't say for sure. I mean, obviously, I think you talk to players and they say, yeah, you know, it is kind of, you know, interesting and, you know, maybe we need some more of this and more of that. But on the other hand, it was, you know, the coaches in the NFL obviously had the upper hand in scheduling. And I go back to Bill Parcells with the Giants in the 80s. And remember when he started to, you know, push the off-season program and basically twisted guys' arms and said, you better be in that program or else.
Yep.
And he got very good attendance. I think it was 100% attendance. And the rules were not in effect in those days, which said, hey, you can't do that to us. That's our free time. And,
sure.
You know, the players, generally speaking, did not object because they knew if they wanted to play on Parcells' teams that they better be in camp or better be in OTAs, and then they'll be in best shape for camp.
Yeah, so, and then look, I understand why you also want to worry about injuries and you don't want to overdo it, but there has to be a happy medium. There can't be one or the other, and I think that's what we're dealing with right now. There's just not enough practice. And again, whether it's actual practice in the heat, I mean, there has to be some sort of situation where, hey, you know what, now that we do have extra practices again or extra time with the coaches again, you know what, when it is 90 degrees out there or 95 degrees out there, we're going to practice, but we're only going to practice limited on those days. But we're going to get extra this done and extra that done. Or, you know what, we're just going to get limited on this day because we did have the extra practice sessions or the extra film room and the extra time together over the last few months. So we can afford to not kill you guys when the heat is out and it really does in some cases danger the players. I know they're really good about that. We don't get any crazy situations anymore, and it's good. There's no question. It's good for the players to be put through the test, put through the rigors and all of that. And they should to a point. But then there's also you don't want to baby them as well.
Well, I'll say this. I think you touched on it, the injury situation. How many injuries do we hear about during this time of year now? Pulled hamstrings and,
sure.
strange injuries
That's
and
right.
muscle pulls and everything.
I think we got 12
possibly,
ACLs already, Randy. That's what I've heard.
Yeah,
12 ACLs.
Yeah, and I know that, I don't know if all strength coaches agree, but there's a lot of strength coaches I've talked to over the years that say, yeah, we can reduce the incidence of those injuries because we know what to do, what to emphasize in the off season, and how to strengthen the knee and how to strengthen the elbow and the ankle and so on. And how many injuries do we hear about that cost players not even months but weeks of precious practice time, and disrupt the momentum of building a team? I mean, you really want to get that momentum going at this time of year, so you get head into the season,
sure.
Hitting on all cylinders. And you can't do that if you have 5 or 6 or 10 of your key players sidelined because of injuries that maybe could have been prevented.
Yeah, and so that's an interesting argument. Hey, we limited practice time, and yet we have more injuries? So come on, that's got to tell you something. There's got to be a way to figure it out. With all the money in the world that the NFL has, they have to come to some – and we're talking to player union too. Get real, come up with something that makes sense for everybody. And hopefully we'll see that get better, because I think, no question, a little bit more time that these players have with the coaching staffs, a lot, especially the rookies and all the free agent turnovers, learning new schemes and everything, we'll get better football. And that's what we want. We want better football as fans. And if we get better football, more people watch, the league makes more money, the players make more money. It's simple economics. All right, let's get into this green and white scrimmage, Randy. And we'll start with the quarterbacks. Why not? Let's start with the hopeful wonder boy, Sam Darnold. So you were there. How did he look?
Yeah, I was there, and I thought that Sam looked pretty good. I don't think he looked great, but I think he looked very accurate. He was not throwing downfield a lot. He was, I think the writers charted him about 9 of 11 during the team drills. For about 89 yards, something like that. He did not throw an interception during those periods. He did not throw a touchdown during those periods. He did lead a few drives when they got into the scrimmage-like portion of the third period of the practice to a field goal. So, you like to see that, but, you like to see some explosives too, and we didn't see that part of it, but we saw Sam Darnold continuing to look the part of a pro quarterback. Can he take that job from Josh McCown and Teddy Bridgewater and start on opening night against the Lions? I don't know that. Coach Bowles is keeping it very close to the vest. He's not giving any indications if anybody's ahead. Right now, the depth chart is very clear. It's McCown, Bridgewater, and Darnold. But Sam Darnold looks better. He's hitting balls that he wasn't maybe hitting the first couple of practices when he first reported. And I really like the rollout dimension, the bootleg dimension that he shows. I'm sure he showed it quite a bit to Southern Cal fans, but he really looks comfortable doing that, whether he's throwing on the run or if he's keeping, if he's tucking it and then going for the sticks. And he did that really smartly on one play, roll left, saw that his man coverage, he ducked in there and got 9 yards on a 3rd and 2 and slid beautifully. And, Jet fans know about sliding and how, hey, come on, Mark Sanchez, come on, guys, let's slide a little better. He seemed to have that part of the pro quarterback equation down.
Yeah, well, he's got the big body. I think that's and again, the athleticism, as you mentioned, that is all part of what really makes him a quarterback that really fits the game today. And everything else that we can get into during the season. But you all know and should know the scouting report by now, and you're seeing it live on the field. And I get the I don't know about you, Randy, but I really do believe that based on what I've seen, and even a little bit of what we've heard, from what we've heard and what we may see, as long as he continues to progress. Let's just say he doesn't start for whatever reason. That's just Todd Bowles, old school, start McCown. It's Sam Darnold. If he was in probably, 50 or 60% of the other teams in the NFL and they drafted him, he'd be ready to start. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of rookie quarterbacks get thrown in there from day one that do not look as ready as Sam Darnold has already looked so far. And now whether or not it works out for him or not, well, again, that's something that we'll find out soon enough. But I think at this point, the kid looks like, compared to what we've seen in the past from rookie quarterbacks starting on day one, he could probably do it.
Yeah, he probably could, but conversely, just to give the Jets' point of view on this and Bowles' point of view, and Jeremy Bates' probably too. Sam is a part of a quarterback room that Todd Bowles just, I think it was yesterday, said he hasn't had a quarterback room this. I don't know if he said talented, but just
Sure.
chocked with experience
Yep.
and skill.
Yep.
Probably since he took over the Jets. And that's not a slam on necessarily Fitzpatrick, when he had a very fine 2015, but it was just all three guys.
Oh, yeah.
What do they have? What do they bring to the table? How's their grasp of the scheme? What's their mentality? All three of these guys want to play. They want to, excel. They're pushing each other. They say that. They encourage each other. And it seems like, at the moment, it's like, how can you lose with that kind of situation?
You can't.
But conversely, the issue is, what if, Josh McCown just still looks better at everything than Sam Darnold? Do you start McCown? Again, you know what he can bring to the table. You know that he looked very good, actually, in a lot of the games up until when he, fractured his wrist at Denver. And so, maybe that's a call that Todd makes again. But he doesn't have the same quarterback depth chart as last year when he had Josh McCown, Christian Hackenberg, and Bryce Petty.
Yeah, I guess the point is that the Jets, in this day and age of how quarterback starved the league is, I think the Jets have 3 starting quarterbacks. And again, that all depends on Darnold. But again, that's why I'm comparing him to other rookies, is that I think he is a starter day one if you just compare him to the other rookies we've seen start over the years. But I'm not saying that that means he's going to start or he should start. It's just, and by the way, not just Todd Bowles, but I think ever. I mean, seriously, Randy, have you ever seen more depth, rookie, veteran on complete different scales with the intriguing guy in the middle like Bridgewater? The Jets, I don't think they've ever had a quarterback room like this. I don't remember one. Do you?
No, I was going back with even Wayne Corbett and I were talking, the old Jet wide receiver, not that old, but we were reminiscing, and he says he doesn't remember when he's seen the Jets quarterbacks, all 3 of whom could start 16 games. That's the
Yes.
quote he had.
Yes.
And I said, yeah, I'd go back to 2000. Maybe a young Chad Pennington was drafted, and Vinny Testaverde was coming back from his Achilles in '99, and Ray Lucas had started and done pretty well in Vinny's wake that year, and so that was a pretty good competition. But you kind of figured probably Testaverde would win, but Pennington might push him, and that's what happened. But that's a great example of what the mentality used to be, which is Pennington came in as the 18th pick of the 2000 draft. He didn't start really for 2 years. So
That's right.
These days, I don't think you can wait that long
No.
if you've got a guy that you like. But it's all a matter of what do you see for your team? What do you think is the best for your team to get it winning? Because, not only is it about young quarterbacks getting playing time, but it's win now. So that's going to be the dynamic, I think, that Todd Bowles is going to have to sort out.
And here's the other dangerous thing that you do have to consider, and I've talked about this over the years, even with Fitzpatrick and last year with McCown. If you're trying to figure out whether a Geno Smith or a Bryce Petty or a Christian Hackenberg can become your quarterback, what happens is, and this is more serious now if you take the guy number 3, what happens is you start McCown. What happens if the Jets are winning and you never take McCown out? Now you've just gone a whole year without playing Darnold. Let's say you go 9-7 and miss out on the playoffs. I don't think the fans will be happy about that, and I'm not even sure that's a good way about going and developing Sam Darnold if he's ready. So that's the trick also that has got to be in the back of their minds, is if we go in this direction and we're doing well, what are we going to do? We can't take him out and throw in Darnold. That's not. We're not going to do that. We need to win games too here as a coaching staff and the environment and so forth. And we can't just give the kid a job that maybe the rest of the team doesn't believe he deserves because we're winning. That's something also that could be a very tricky sticking point. Again, if they believe Darnold is capable of getting out there and playing.
All that's valid, and I'll tell you, Greg, that's I think that's what a lot of fans feared or saw coming down the road last year was, what if McCown does so well that we don't get to see Christian Hackenberg? I don't think that was really, that was not high on my list because I saw Christian Hackenberg in 2 preseasons.
Sure.
And he just did not look ready
Yep.
To take the job. So I wasn't worried about that. But a lot of fans did want to see either Hackenberg or Petty. And they said, well, what if McCown wins enough games? We're never going to see these guys. Well, you ended up not seeing them until McCown got hurt, and then
That's
we
right.
saw Petty. And
then we
Bryce,
realized,
yeah, exactly. And I like Bryce personally. I think he's a gamer. But, it just didn't look like it was there late last season when there were some winnable games. And, not that they were going to the playoffs, but you want to see what you've got for next year. Well, I think the Jets saw that. And so here we have a restructuring of the quarterback depth chart. And as you said, and as a lot of people have said, this is now a strength of the team. But it's indicative of what we've talked about before, which is Todd Bowles, but also Mike McCagnon and his personnel people have built a team right now that seems to have depth everywhere, seems to have competition at every position, more so than I can remember in a long time.
Yep.
And so I think that's a very good thing, taking it out of the quarterback lens.
Sure.
And looking at it from a team point of view. I think that's a great problem, if you call it that. It's a great problem to have going into the season.
Talk about the other quarterbacks. I know McCown, and look, we mentioned this, I think, last week. I think what we saw in this scrimmage is going to be what we're going to see in the preseason. I don't think McCown's going to get much work. I think as long as he continues to look the part in practices and he goes out there and they're comfortable with him picking up the new offense, he's not going to play a lot. And it's just going to be up to Bridgewater, and Darnold to prove that they're capable of catching up and possibly passing McCown on the field.
That's, I think, what's going to play out. And Josh McCown even acknowledged that yesterday when he talked with the writers. He said, hey, whatever they want from me, but, I know the system kind of because it's a different system with Jeremy Bates taking over for Coach Morton. But nevertheless, McCown knows, all the moving parts, and he knows Todd Bowles. And Bowles decided not to play him a whole lot last year, knowing that he could assimilate the thing very quickly and was a pro in all ways. And so I think we didn't see much of McCown or a whole lot of Bridgewater, but more of Bridgewater than McCown at the scrimmage, at the practice on Saturday night. Going into the first preseason game, which is on Friday night against the Atlanta Falcons at MetLife Stadium, as McCown said, I could play 1 or 2 series or not, and that's fine with me. Whatever they want me to do, I'll do. And that's a great attitude for anybody to have. And, you got your starter from last year saying it, so I think that's a good message to the rest of the quarterbacks and to the rest of the team.
And don't you think that, especially in the first preseason game, because of the fact that we're not going to see the starters in the other positions very long, that it would make a little bit more sense to see Darnold earlier? Maybe start Darnold. Why not? Get him out there with the ones. I don't want to put him out there with backups. I want to see what he could do with the ones, protect him the way he needs to be protected. And maybe just the first preseason game, we didn't even see McCown.
Yeah, that's possible. I don't know. Todd was not going to tip his hand on that, and he probably won't until, as Parcells always used to say, come to the game, fellas, you'll find out. So we'll find out on Friday night exactly what the quarterback rotation is going to be. But, that's an interesting problem because you would say, we should put, Darnold with the ones, at least the one line.
Yes.
The number one line, because you want to protect the guy who could be your franchise for years to come. But what happens to the other quarterbacks who are trying to win jobs? You're going to saddle Teddy Bridgewater with the 2s and the 3s, and he's still coming back to a certain degree off of the horrible knee injury that he suffered 2 years ago.
Sure.
But he's looking a lot better. He'd want to be behind the ones also. And if McCown plays, it's like, well, what are you going to put me with the 3s?
No.
That's something that Bowles is going to have to balance pretty much, at least for the opener, because then when you get to the second game, you can leave your starters in longer. And the third game with the Giants,
that's right.
Definitely, you want your starters to go 3 quarters. So
yes.
Everybody's going to get a chance to play with the ones, but it's a question of, and I don't know how it's going to be resolved. How do you, who do you put in front of Sam Darnold when he goes against the Falcons?
All right, let's now talk about a big play in the game, in the scrimmage, that I think it was big for two key reasons, and that was that second period of the team drills play where Josh McCown and Bilal Powell connected on a touchdown pass with Darren Lee covering on the play. Lee fell down, attempting to tackle. After the completion, Powell wound up taking it to the house. And what's important here, Randy, is that not only has Powell once again proved that he needs to get his hands on the ball as often as possible. I mean, he's a game changer, playmaker. Talked about this a lot last year. And I understand he's got some injury issues and such, and the team doesn't want to give him too many snaps, touches, and so forth. But I want to see Bilal Powell get the ball as often as he can because he has demonstrated that he could take it to the house. So that's one thing. But on the flip side, something that I've also, I've tried hard to defend Darren Lee. I have. He's young. There's this, there's that. But then I'm also just being honest. And these things like this scrimmage play, they got to stop, Randy. They have to stop. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I don't need to hear Darren Lee talking in the press anymore. I don't need the coaching staff praising Darren Lee in the press anymore. I don't want to hear it anymore. I want to see plays on the field. I know it's one play, but it has to stop, Randy. It has to stop. He has to start making impact plays.
Well, either he has to start making them or someone has to step in and make them. That's obviously a call that Bowles is going to have to make. Todd Bowles has said this offseason that he wants to see a big step forward for Darren Lee in year 3.
Yep.
And, he's put more on Lee's plate, and I think Lee is putting more on his own plate as far as leadership. I wouldn't put a whole lot into one play, in a green and white practice, but it's something that you want to keep an eye on because the play was one of those, bang, bang plays. Nobody's in the deep middle.
Sure.
Powell, very good route runner, very good receiver. Darren Lee, as you mentioned, tried to tackle him, stumbled, fell, and Powell is all of a sudden loose going up the middle. And I think that was the only touchdown, really, of the practice. And so that was very promising for the offense and not as promising for the defense. And I'm sure, both sides coaches are getting that thing, are looking at that in the proper lens. And, the defense has got to be able to guard against that kind of thing when the opponents take it to them as opposed to the Jets' first offense. But Powell, you mentioned, yes. I mean, this guy is a pro all the way. It's hard to believe it's his 8th year with the Jets.
Yeah.
And every year he seems to get a little better.
Yep.
He never gets a lot of touches, but he gets a good amount, and he does very good things with them. It could be a 75-yard touchdown run, which he had last year. It could be averaging, I think it was like 4.8 per carry, which he did the year before. He's always a danger in the passing game. I think one game he had 100 yards after the catch 2 years ago. He's dangerous. He's still dangerous. I think he showed that on Saturday night. Now, for the offense, the question will be, how do you balance Bilal Powell's touches with Isaiah Crowell's touches? Because Isaiah is a guy who also, he came in from Cleveland, and he's kind of said in the past that he'd like to get the ball more. I don't know how he can get it a lot more than he did in Cleveland because he was the lead ball carrier, but he did split time with Duke Johnson there, and that was part of his, observations when, as he left the Browns. But
sure.
There are two talented backs there. And then you've got Eli McGuire, who's now sidelined with a foot injury, but he's dangerous. And Thomas Rawls is a guy who has been dangerous in the past with the Seahawks, and he's here. And so you've got a lot of balancing to do. Jeremy Bates is going to have to decide how to play these guys. But one thing I would say, too, about the Bates offense, he seems to be wanting to get the ball to the running back more, not just checkdowns, but on design plays. Get the ball to the tight ends more, which is something that Jet fans haven't seen a whole lot of, although they saw more with Austin Seferi and Jenkins last year. But the previous 2 seasons, it was like, is there a tight end on this club? So all of those things are interesting and promising, and Bates is going to have to sort it out. But Powell definitely looks like he hasn't lost anything, and he's ready to go in year 8.
And by the way, I think that it would be creative for Bates to get both Crowell and Powell on the field at the same time, and then maybe even put Powell in motion. Get him on a linebacker.
There you go.
Exploit mismatches that way. But this is the thing and again, I know different coordinator, but still, last year, let's keep in mind, and I was just really upset about this most of the season. Bilal Powell led the team in snap percentage for running backs, but he only had 38% compared to Matt Forte's 34%, and that drove me crazy. Absolutely crazy. And I don't get, and this is why I don't understand. We talked about this the first call we had a few months ago. I don't understand, outside the injuries, why he doesn't get more touches. There's just, what is it? Is there something I'm missing that I'm not seeing? Because even if you want to throw the injuries in there, fine, but still, I still think he needs more touches. I'm not asking you to be the bell cow, but I think he needs to get his hands on the ball more.
Yeah, I think that whether it's Todd Bowles or Rex Ryan before him, I think they always felt like they had a valuable weapon that they needed to conserve in Bilal and use him judiciously. I don't know that it was an injury history or a fear of injury, but I just think that they had very good backs to pair with him. Now, last year you mentioned Thomas
Forte.
Yes, Matt Forte. I'm going back to Thomas Jones there. But Matt Forte was at the end of his career. Obviously, he retired after the season.
Yep.
But, he still, even though he did slow down a bit, he still was a very wily, productive guy. I think they wanted to rely on him as much as they could. They tried to strike a balance. But, you'd want to see more from Bilal Powell if you can. And if you don't see more from Bilal Powell, that should mean that Isaiah Crowell is doing a heck of a job.
We hope
so.
Correct.
Or the first and second down guy.
Yes.
And Powell is doing a fantastic job as the fill-in as the third down back.
That's the point, Randy. See, I'm okay with the idea of, you know what, Powell only gets a certain amount of touches because we do want to keep him fresh. And look, it's working. Look at all the big plays, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, fine, as long as the number one guy is producing. I don't want to see the number one guy with a 3.7-yard average and Bilal Powell getting less than 40% of the snaps. So as long as Crowell's doing his job and the line is producing and he's got a 4.5-yard average, something close to that, and Powell only gets limited touches and makes a few big plays now and then, I'm okay with that. I'm not going to, hey, it's working. It's just when the number one guy isn't producing and Powell's not getting his snaps, that's when I have an issue. So... by the way, what about Cannon, the rookie? He seemed to get in on a lot of action, and he's so fast, and we talked about him potentially as a kick returner, but we saw him out there on offense in a variety of packages.
We did, and it was very impressive. Trenton Cannon made it into my headline of my practice review, which included Darnold, of course, but also Cannon, so that was interesting. The guy is a sixth-rounder. He's a Division II guy, but he has come in with a head of steam. He's a fast guy. He's very elusive. He showed that in the practice, and he showed it not just running the ball with straight handoffs, but I think one of the things that we're going to see a lot of number 40 doing is he's going to get tosses. He's going to get sweeps. They're going to get him out of the backfield to catch balls, and that'll be another interesting problem to sort out. If he starts to muscle it on Eli McGuire's, snaps, because Eli was a good spot guy and a good third down back last year, although his rushing average was not fine. It was not high, but he did pop a few long runs, and he did open some eyes with his play. He
looked
very, secure and as a second-year guy now.
Yes.
And I think everybody kind of remembers Stump Mitchell with an eye-opening comparison to Ladini and Tomlinson. So, of course, if you have an LT on your squad along with the other guys, you got a real problem because you got to find carries and touches for all those guys.
Yep.
But Trenton Cannon is going to be probably the kick returner, but we don't know that for sure. He's listed second string at the moment on the just-released depth chart, but he's going to get a lot of looks there, and it looks like he's going to be very comfortable in the offense. Yeah,
if Cannon can produce in the kick return game, as we talked about before, that could definitely open up a spot and make things hard for guys like Andre Roberts and such to make the team. By the way, McGuire led the Jets running backs in yards per catch. He had 17 receptions, but he had a 10.4 average. Not bad.
Very nice.
Yep, for a rookie running back. Okay, what about, let's talk about free agents. And we know some of the big guys, Tremaine Johnson and such, but what about any sleeper free agents that might have performed well at the scrimmage or that you've noticed in practice?
Well, I guess we should go to the linebackers because Todd Bowles, interestingly, placed a couple of free agent pickups on the outside positions for the start of the team drills, and that was Brandon Copeland and Frankie Luvu. And that was kind of, it's like, well, where's Jordan Jenkins? Where's whoever, Josh Martin, who played there last year on the weak side. But Todd said, I wanted to see these guys. They're flashing. They're looking good in practice.
Okay.
And so we wanted to see them, see what they can do. And Brandon Copeland did, in fact, off the blind side, put up a few really nice edge rushes that would have been sacks if, of course, the quarterbacks weren't wearing the red jerseys.
Okay.
But also just looked very comfortable, as he should. He's a pro. And, so those two guys kind of stood out there. And, another guy might be Andre Roberts, looking good at wide receiver and listed as the first kickoff returner and punt returner at the moment. And so we'll see a lot of that as the preseason goes on, see how the return game sorts itself out. But
yep.
Roberts is feeling comfortable there. So those are three guys. I don't know, anybody else you had in mind?
Well, actually, what I did want to ask you about, and I know he's not a free agent, but it almost is like he's a free agent sleeper, is Malden. I mean, this is a kid that everybody's got, all the fans, there's so much hope, and can he return? And if so, how much that could impact the Jets' pass rush? What was interesting is before the injury, I happen to think that he was more effective playing down at the edge than playing down on the line than he was stand up. I don't know why, but it just seemed that way to me. It just seemed that like he would make more plays, and in those passing situations when he was lined outside, as a defensive end, wide. But anyway, fact is that Malden is here and hopefully here to help in the pass rush game. Have we seen anything yet from him in practices or the scrimmage?
Well, I think Lorenzo has shown a little bit of giddy up there in the practices. I didn't see a lot of him flashing at the green and white. But he definitely, I think, is on the road back. He said he is. He's a really good guy. I mean, he's got a good sense about him. He knows that he's been off for a year, so he's got to get back into good graces and get back into the picture. But he quietly, he confidently but quietly asserts, I can be that edge rusher. But that's up to the coaches. But I can be that guy. So you like to hear that, but of course, this game is filled with people saying things that they can't back up. So let's see if Lorenzo Malden can do it. He showed a little bit of that 2 years ago, and, the Jets still need that presence, some guy who can, get to the quarterback. They might have, the ideal situation for, 3-4 is to get a lot of the pressure from your penetrating big guys on the line.
Yeah.
And the linebackers obviously would be a little more involved in a 4-3. But they might have that in Nate Shepard and Foley Fatukasi and maybe in Henry Anderson is another. He just came in late from the Colts in the draft, and he looks pretty good. So you might be getting a pass rush out of that 5 technique on the left side maybe. Leo Williams, you definitely want to see him get back to the numbers he was putting up in his, first and second years.
Sure.
And not last year. But you do want to get that linebacker who can find his way to the quarterback and put some pressure on the Tom Brady's of the world and so on and so forth. So he says he can be that guy. We still have to see more of it. He's showing that, he's on the way back. And this is going to be a very important preseason for Zoe.
Well, talk about Shepard because you've mentioned some nice things that you've seen from him so far. The coaching staff has praised him at times, and we know from his past experience personally that he's a tough kid. So, and matter of fact, looking at the depth chart that you mentioned, I know it's early. But it might surprise some Jet fans to know that Shepard is listed number 1 on the depth chart ahead of Henry Anderson for now.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, I was going to say he's looked good in practice. He's 315, 6'4", and he's gotten some some kind words from Bowles, and Leo Williams has said the same thing. Leo said, I told him the other day, I see you can do this once, now I got to see you do it all the time.
Yep.
I think Shepard is the kind of guy who takes that to heart, and I can't say that he stood out. He probably didn't get a lot of snaps at the green and white, but he has definitely made his presence felt during practices, and it'll be interesting to see if another Division II guy, and if they have both Trenton Cannon and Nate Shepard come through. That's quite a Division II haul for Mike Maccagnan.
Yes.
But right now it looks like he's going to be very prominent in the Jets defense. The first string status, I think Todd Bowles softened that a little bit yesterday by saying, well, we put him there, but we also have Henry Anderson and Foley Fatukasi.
Sure.
And so it could be one guy one week and the other guy the next week. But as of right now, Nate Shepard making his presence felt.
Yeah, we also touched up on the fact that I told you that I was kind of frustrated about how the Jets, they keep talking about looking, and everybody has been saying for years the Jets got to get themselves a pass rusher for this 3-4 defense, and yet even this past draft and nobody really is taken in that spot. Hey, Jeff Holland's available. He isn't even drafted. Nope, he goes to Denver. And how frustrating that is for fans. What's going on? And I just get the feeling that it's just because we're just not going to play a base 3-4. And I know many teams don't anymore all the time, but I just don't think we're going to play anywhere even close. I think that because the strength is just as much on the defensive line as it is at linebacker, and especially at safety, that we could use some of those players as well up to the line of scrimmage. I think Todd Bowles is going to be like a mad genius, and I think he's going to use a whole variety of packages, and we're going to see. It'll be interesting to see how the snaps look week one.
He could be, although I think that his tendency is not to go too crazy, but maybe he and Casey Rogers, the defensive coordinator, have gotten together and said, we've got the players now, let's do a little more of a hybrid thing.
Yes.
We haven't seen a lot of that, I would say, during camp so far, but it's still early, and look for that as the preseason goes on. But I think the key thing, too, is, like I said earlier, both the defensive line and linebacker have gotten some very interesting bodies onto the roster this past off season. And so, we mentioned Copeland. We've got Neville Hewitt inside, maybe, and we got Pierre Lewis, who's looking pretty good. And so, we don't know about all of these guys, but they're going to be putting their hats in the ring too.
Sure.
And on the defensive line, everybody kind of thought, oh well, that experiment with Leo and Muhammad Wilkerson and Sheldon Richardson, that didn't work out too well. But hey, they're rebuilding that concept with Leo Williams and a lot of young guys, and so I think it can work, but it's a work in progress. All I can say to Jets fans is, I'm frustrated too that we can't find that pass rusher, but we couldn't find the quarterback for a long time, and we need to get that guy. At the moment, it looks like we hit a home run there.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of you take care of the things that you can take care of, and if you can't do it in the off season and the personnel season, you turn it over to the coaches and you hope that they can find the scheme and find the bodies to get it done. And so right now, I would say we don't see that pass rusher, that monster guy, but I think we're going to see an improved pass rush. It has to be a little better because the last 2 years it was, I think, 31st in the league or something like that. So it's got to get better, and I think it will get better, and how much we have yet to see.
Well, look, we all know Todd Bowles, and we're not trying to compare him, obviously, to the greatest coach of our time in Bill Belichick. But what you got to do is take a look at what Belichick has done the past year or so with his defense. I mean, here's a guy that has always been 3-4, and he completely changed and went with, I guess, what fit his personnel. And so that's kind of what I believe we are going to see this season. I think it's inevitable, unless, of course, a couple of the players do step up. And that includes Darren Lee that we started the show with. And who do you think right now, talking about some other potential free agents, and you mentioned them, if Darren Lee doesn't do the job, do you give an edge to somebody to possibly be the guy that takes over?
Well, I mean, Kevin Pierre-Louis, I think, is inside. Neville Hewitt is inside. But, it seems like we have a lot of guys that are going to switch hit, go back and forth, inside, outside, depending upon the scheme. You mentioned Belichick being a master at looking at his personnel and deciding what he's going to play. Belichick and others are also very game plan oriented, game plan specific. So it's not only what my personnel is, but it's what the opponent is.
Yes.
And so possibly, I mean, if the guys are young enough, you might worry about can they handle a different game plan, a really radically different game plan from week to week, or do we need to play a little more vanilla until they get their feet underneath them, or can they handle it? We're going to find out if they can handle that kind of scheming and change-ups, and it would be very interesting to see if the Jets can transform into that kind of Belichickian kind of defense where you don't know what the heck they're going to show up in from week to week.
And what about Dylan Donahue? I guess we're going to find out possibly now that his court duties are done, whether or not he's going to get suspended before the season. If he does, couple of games, up to 4, you would think. So that's still going to come down. From what I hear, it sounds like as far as him practicing, things are going better this season than last season, which you would hope, especially with Kevin Green tutoring him and talking the kid up. Is there hope that Donahue could be somebody that could step up and make some plays for the team this year?
I think there is hope, and I didn't mean to leave him out, although we haven't seen a lot of him flashing, I don't think, in camp, but he's definitely a factor. He had the 2 issues, the 2 DWIs. He pleaded to both, I think, in the last week, and we don't know what the NFL is going to do. I do not get into the prognostication game with the NFL penalties because I don't know what they're judging them by, from, player to player. But whatever happens, Dylan Donahue's second year, he says, I haven't touched a drop of alcohol since that last incident a couple of months ago. Let's hope that that's correct. And he came in as, I think, another Division II guy who had some pass rush chops that they were hoping that Kevin Green could polish him up and wind him up and get him out there. And that's still the case. So I certainly wouldn't rule Dylan Donahue out. I think he and Lorenzo Malden are the veteran holdovers that are going to try to hold off the guys like Brandon Copeland and Frankie Louisville, and we'll see how that shakes out. But it definitely would be good to see Dylan Donahue start to realize some of that potential he came to the Jets with last year.
Another sleeper free agent to bring up is Garcia. And whether or not, and again, it's always hard to gauge an offensive lineman, especially early on. But I think if we take a look at the depth chart on the offensive line, a couple of guys that are very intriguing are Garcia and last year's free agent rookie Braden, because Braden is now penciled in on the depth chart as the number 3 third-string left tackle. And if he can end up providing good play at both left tackle or right tackle and guard, then that could, and the Jets feel he's capable of being a backup in the NFL, and maybe more, then it gives the Jets an opportunity. Sorry about that noise. That was Randy. He got cut off. So I'll hold off for him to come back on. Not sure why he got cut off. But anyway, I'll get into my Braden point with Antonio Garcia soon when I get him back on. I also want to bring up, before I let Randy go, the center situation with Swanson and Harrison competing for that job, and also the safety situation with Middleton, right now listed at number 2 on the depth chart, which, again, it's early, and we talked about the depth chart last week. We were giving our predictions on that show with Jan Levine, and I did not have Middleton on the team, I believe. Jan did. I hope Middleton makes the team. I certainly do. It'd be nice to see the kid get his opportunity. Hopefully he's healthy. He's a physical kid. Nice little underdog story. But it's going to be it's just going to be so tough at that spot back there in the defensive backfield. Because you take a look at the defensive backfield, and again, we were as we mentioned last week, you could really see up to 13, 14, 15 guys that are competing for the possibly 10 spots in the defensive backfield. And again, I'm looking at my notes now. I had Middleton either on the team or if it's possible to get him on the practice squad again. Don't know, but if it's possible. But if Middleton can't qualify for the practice squad, and I don't like getting too much into the whole practice, the rules, the minutia of the practice squad, or I mean, it's too technical for me, or any of these rules in sports when it comes to things like that drive me crazy. So I try to stay out of it and leave that up to the experts like Randy, who I guess I should probably try to get him on the phone myself now. Anyway, Wilcox is in. And we heard good things about Derek Jones. That would be nice. We haven't heard much about Jeremy Clark, but don't forget, he was a guy that actually was rated higher than Derek Jones. Many people thought Clark could have been like as high as a third-round draft pick, but he had the injury, and so the Jets felt maybe they got themselves a bargain if he can come back healthy. But he is coming back a year off an injury, and he played he's a little bit more than a year because he did get in a little bit of action late last season. And the other guy is Brooks, that is competing as far as the safeties are concerned. So there's a lot of competition to worry about right now for the Jets. And let me go ahead and get Randy back on back there. And that is something that I wanted to touch up on, especially with Middleton. Let me see if I can get Randy. I feel like I'm on a radio station. Yes, this is Power 50. You know this.
Your call has been.
Do you know the answer to this trivia question? I guess Randy's line got really disconnected. Because if you can answer the trivia question, we're going to give you a $79 gift certificate to Lenny's. Okay, so by the way, just want to let you know our schedule here on Jets FM. You got the Friday night Jets game. We're going to air I guess you could say the recap of the game on Monday the 13th. So that's our next show, and that'll give us, not much because the scrimmage, the practices with Washington will start on Sunday the 12th and end on the 14th. So Jan and I will do a little bit of a recap of the preseason game, which, by the way, is going to be live on NFL Network for anybody outside the Jet area. And then Randy's going to return the 17th. So Randy will be back with me in about, 9 days, 10 days? And that will be after preseason game number 2. So that'll give us an opportunity to wrap up the second preseason game, and then we move into the third week and so on. So that's the upcoming schedule for the Jets, actually for the Jets FM here on the Our-Lads Football Radio Network. I'll give Randy one more try. If not, I guess his cell phone is, I don't know, maybe his cell phone is completely destroyed or something. I don't know. Let me lower that. Let's see. Am I getting the right number? Oh, and we have been starting our college football interviews to preview the college football season 2. We talked Auburn football yesterday. That's available on demand. And then we have our 32 NFL training camp previews also available on demand. And every team, of course.
Your call has been.
Including the Jets. All right, so something's wrong with Randy's phone. We'll try to figure that out. Anyway, the other thing that we were going to discuss, I talked about Braden and his situation. And by the way, if they do like what they see in Braden, then there is a really good opportunity for the Jets to open a couple spots on the line. And that means possible trouble for guys like Quali and Dozier, who have been around a couple of years. Have they done their job, though? Do the Jets feel like those guys could actually come in and start and do a good job? I don't know. Because they really haven't proven it at this point. I think we could say the same thing about Ijalana, but for whatever reason, the Jets like him more than they do Dozier and Quali. So that's why I'm willing to keep him on the team. And then you got to wonder if Garcia does his job and Braden looks good. That definitely means trouble for Quali and Dozier. And then you've got the other matchup, which we're going to follow, is Swanson and Harrison. No way both guys are going to be on the team. That'd be very surprising if they both made the team. So it's going to be Swanson against Harrison. And those were some of the other main talking points that we were going to get into. But apparently that's it for Randy. Again, you've got the schedule. So we're going to be back talking more Jets football on Monday. So that's the next show. And again, Jan Levine is going to be on with me. And we'll wrap up preseason game number 1. So that'll do it for this training camp edition of Jets FM on the OFN. You can follow Randy on Twitter at rlangjets. You can also follow Jan at airjan23. Of course, we are at Prime SN. Don't forget to listen to all the on-demand shows just within minutes, like this one, following every live broadcast at ourlads.com, where you can also check out the best NFL and college football depth charts in the industry. As I mentioned, you can listen in on those 32 preseason camp previews. Matter of fact, 31 including the Jets. That's available on the OFN page, as well as our current college football preview interviews like Auburn. Tomorrow, we're going to be interviewing Clemson and USC writers. Thursday, it'll be Texas A&M, Michigan State. And we've got a whole bunch of other interviews lined up for college and pro before and, of course, obviously during the season, including some great fantasy coverage that's going to be starting soon. So we'll update you on that when that is in the books. And also, not only follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN, but you can use that for any questions or comments that you'd like to participate on the show. You can send your messages, and then we'll convey that here on the air. So thanks again for tuning in to Jets FM on the OFN. For Randy Lang, I'm Greg DePalma. You know the drill. Alpha Mike Foxtrot.